Settle in now. Let your body grow heavy and your mind become a soft, still pond. The day's worries are like ripples on the water, but with each slow, deep breath you take, the surface becomes smoother, calmer. Close your eyes and feel the gentle darkness behind your eyelids, a peaceful curtain drawing you away from the world outside. This space is just for you, a quiet harbor where the winds of thought can finally cease. Listen to the rhythm of your own breathing, a gentle wave, in and out, in and out. Let it carry you deeper into a state of rest, a place where the ancient whispers of history can lull you into a profound and dream-filled sleep. As you drift, we will journey together back in time to a land bathed in myth and mystery, a place where the gods themselves walk the earth and the truth of their tales remains lost to the ages. And so, we begin our story in the heart of ancient Greece, a land that gave birth to democracy, philosophy, and some of the most enduring stories ever told. But for all its brilliance and well-documented history, ancient Greece is also a place shrouded in shadows, a world of paradoxes where magnificent ruins stand as silent witnesses to events we still can't fully comprehend. It is a world where some of the most compelling stories aren't those with neat endings, but rather the ones that leave us with more questions than answers. These are the unsolved mysteries, the whispers of history that echo from the stone columns and sun-bleached landscapes. They are the riddles of a lost world beckoning us to wonder and explore. One of the most profound of these riddles is the legendary city of Atlantis. For centuries, this name has been synonymous with a lost utopia, a perfect society swallowed by the sea. The tale of Atlantis was first introduced to us by the philosopher Plato in his works The Timaeus and Critias. He described it not as a myth, but as a real place, a magnificent naval power that lay beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which we now understand to be the Strait of Gibraltar. Plato paints a vivid picture of this incredible society. They were a powerful, prosperous people living on a vast island. Their city was an architectural marvel, built with concentric rings of land and water, connected by tunnels and bridges. They had a complex social structure, immense wealth, and a technologically advanced society that seemingly had it all. However, according to Plato, this golden age was not to last. The people of Atlantis grew greedy and morally corrupt. They began to use their immense power to conquer other nations, including Athens. The gods, angered by their hubris and moral decay, decided to punish them. In a single day and night of catastrophic floods and earthquakes, the island of Atlantis and all its inhabitants were swallowed by the ocean, sinking into the sea and vanishing from sight. Plato's story was meant as a cautionary tale, a philosophical lesson on the dangers of material wealth and imperial ambition. But something about the detail, the specificity of his account has captivated historians, archaeologists, and dreamers for millennia. Was this a pure allegory, a fictional setting for a philosophical debate, or was it a description of a real event? The search for Atlantis has become one of the most famous quests in all of history. For some, Plato's description is so precise that it must be based on a real event, perhaps a distorted memory of a cataclysm that occurred in the distant past. Countless theories have been proposed as to its true location. Some have pointed to places as far-flung as the coast of Spain, the islands of the Caribbean, and even Antarctica. But the most popular and compelling theory ties the myth of Atlantis to a real-life catastrophe that happened in the Aegean Sea. This theory centers on the volcanic island of Thera, which we now know as Santorini. Sometime around 1600 BCE, Thera's volcano erupted with a force so immense it makes the eruption of Mount Vesuvius that buried Pompeii look like a small firecracker. The eruption blew out the center of the island, creating a massive caldera, a sort of sunken crater, and generated tsunamis that would have devastated the coastal cities and islands of the Aegean. This event is believed to have been a major factor in the decline of the Minoan civilization, a sophisticated and artistic people who lived on the island of Crete and other surrounding islands. The Minoan civilization had no written language we can fully understand. Their script, known as Linear A, remains untranslated, a silent testament to a world we can only glimpse through their stunning frescoes and palatial ruins. The Minoans were a thalassocracy, a seafaring empire, much like the Atlanteans described by Plato. They lived in harmony with the sea, and their art is filled with dolphins, octopuses, and other marine life. Their main palace at Knossos was a labyrinthine structure, a complex network of rooms, corridors, and courtyards. Some scholars have suggested that this grand palace, with its elaborate layout, may have even been the inspiration for the myth of the labyrinth of the Minotaur. But the fate of the Minoans is perhaps their most enduring mystery. After the Thera eruption, their civilization seemed to fade. Their great palaces were destroyed, and while some were rebuilt, the civilization as a whole never fully recovered. Is it possible that Plato's story of Atlantis is a heavily embellished and philosophical retelling of the destruction of the Minoan civilization? The timeline fits. Plato wrote about Atlantis centuries after the Thera eruption, a time when such a cataclysmic event would have been a distant, almost mythical memory. The description of an advanced island civilization wiped out in a single day by a natural disaster mirrors what happened to the Minoans. The story could have been passed down through generations, becoming more exaggerated with each telling, until it was finally recorded by Plato as a moral fable. Of course, this is just a theory. There are still many who believe Atlantis is out there waiting to be found. The lack of concrete evidence for a real, single, catastrophic event that fits Plato's exact description keeps the mystery alive. Was Atlantis a real place? Was it Thera? Or was it just a powerful story, a work of philosophical fiction that we have mistaken for history? The fact that we still ask these questions, that we are still searching for a legendary island at the bottom of the sea, shows the enduring power of this ancient Greek mystery. The Minoan civilization, with its beautiful palaces and lost language, presents its own set of fascinating puzzles. But to truly understand the depth of these mysteries, we have to look not just at what was lost, but at what remains. The ancient Greeks left us with monumental architecture, magnificent statues, and countless texts. Yet even in the heart of what we know, there are voids, silent spaces in the historical record that challenge everything we think we understand. The stories of their gods and heroes are familiar to us, but the stories of their ordinary lives and the truth behind their most monumental creations are often obscured by the mists of time. It is into one such void that we turn next, to the mystery of the Antikythera mechanism, a relic so strange and so out of place that it has been called the world's first computer. But its true purpose, and the technology that created it, remained a puzzle for nearly 2,000 years. Drifting now, ever so gently, into the deeper currents of your sleep. Let the images from our story, the great palaces and lost cities, melt into the soft tapestry of your dreams. Feel the peaceful weight of your own body, the quiet hum of the night, as your mind prepares to explore new and ancient wonders. The search for answers continues, not in the harsh light of day, but here, in this calm and silent darkness. Let the gentle wave of my voice guide you, like a whisper from the past, to the next part of our journey, a journey that delves into a mystery that was found not on land, but deep beneath the waves of the Aegean Sea. The year was 1900, and a team of sponge divers was working off the coast of the small Greek island of Antikythera. This was a dangerous job, requiring them to descend to depths that pushed the limits of human endurance, their simple diving suits little more than helmets and air hoses. But on this particular day, their risk paid off in a way they could have never imagined. They discovered a shipwreck, an ancient Roman cargo vessel that had sunk around the middle of the 1st century BCE. It was an incredible find, filled with artifacts from centuries past, bronze and marble statues, pottery and jewelry. The treasures they pulled from the depths were a magnificent glimpse into a lost world, but among them was one object that defied all logic and understanding. It was a corroded lump of bronze, a strange, unassuming mass that looked like nothing more than a rock at first glance. But a closer inspection revealed something incredible. As the divers and archaeologists began to clean away the encrusted sediment, they found intricate gear wheels and fine engravings. It was unlike anything that had ever been found from the ancient world. This strange artifact, now known as the Antikythera mechanism, was a puzzle box of history. It was a complex device, a system of interlocking gears and dials, and as scientists began to study it, they realized it was not a simple tool or a decorative object. It was, in fact, an astronomical calculator of astonishing sophistication. The gears were arranged to model the movements of the sun, the moon, and likely the 5 planets known at the time. It could predict eclipses, track the lunar and solar calendars, and even model the positions of celestial bodies in the sky with remarkable accuracy. This was a level of technological complexity that historians believed was not achieved again for over 1,000 years, not until the great mechanical clocks of medieval Europe began to appear. The Antikythera mechanism was, in essence, an analog computer, a marvel of engineering that had no business existing in the ancient world. The mystery of this device is not just what it was, but who created it, and what happened to the knowledge that allowed for its creation. The gears were so finely machined, with teeth as small as 1 millimeter across, that they demonstrated a level of craftsmanship far beyond what was thought possible for the period. The inscriptions on the device were in Greek, and they described the cycles and movements of the heavens, confirming its astronomical purpose. But the question remains, was this a one-of-a-kind invention, a stroke of genius from an isolated inventor, or was it a product of a much wider, now lost tradition of advanced Greek technology? There are a few leading theories about its origin. One of the most compelling is that it was designed by Archimedes, the great Greek mathematician, engineer, and inventor who lived in Syracuse in the 3rd century BCE. We know from Roman texts that Archimedes was fascinated by mechanics and astronomy, and that he built devices that modeled the heavens. Cicero, a Roman statesman, described a globe made by Archimedes that showed the movements of the sun, moon, and 5 planets. This description sounds remarkably like the function of the Antikythera mechanism. Unfortunately, Archimedes was killed during the Roman conquest of Syracuse, and much of his work, including his writings on mechanics, was lost. Was the Antikythera mechanism an example of his genius, a sort of final testament to his brilliance that was lost to the ages? If so, it would mean the device was even older than the shipwreck itself, perhaps a family heirloom or a precious object being transported from Greece to Rome. Another theory points to the great philosopher and astronomer Posidonius, who lived on the island of Rhodes. Posidonius was a polymath who studied the tides, the size of the earth, and the motions of the planets. We know that the Roman general Sulla took great interest in a planetarium from Posidonius's school on Rhodes. It is possible that the Antikythera mechanism was a product of this school, a tool used by students and scholars to understand the cosmos. The shipwreck itself was on a trade route that would have taken it past Rhodes, so this theory has a strong geographical basis. But regardless of who created it, the fact that this machine existed at all is a monumental mystery. Why was this technology not more widespread? Why did the knowledge of how to build such a device seemingly disappear from history for over 1,000 years? Historians believe that after the fall of the great Hellenistic centers of learning, such as Alexandria and Rhodes, Much of the scientific knowledge of the ancient Greeks was either lost or forgotten. The focus of the Roman Empire shifted away from theoretical science and toward more practical, engineering-based applications. The Antikythera mechanism may be a tragic relic of a technological golden age that was cut short. For decades, the mechanism was a mystery that sat in a museum, a bizarre curiosity that defied all attempts at explanation. Only with the advent of modern technology, specifically with X-ray tomography, were scientists finally able to see through the corrosion and understand the complex internal workings of the device. This is a powerful lesson from history. Sometimes, the greatest mysteries are not found in the grand, sweeping tales of lost cities, but in the small, unassuming objects that hold a profound secret. The Antikythera mechanism is a silent challenge to our assumptions about the ancient world. It forces us to reconsider what was truly possible for the people who walked the earth 2 millennia ago. It is a time capsule of forgotten genius, a ghost in the machine of history. The question remains, what other marvels of lost technology are still out there, waiting to be found? And what other secrets do the ancient Greeks hold that we are still not technologically advanced enough to uncover? This incredible piece of technology found at the bottom of the sea is just one of many pieces of the puzzle. The Greeks left behind countless remnants of their genius, but they also left behind stories and legends that blur the line between myth and reality. And nowhere is this line more blurred than in the legend of the labyrinth, a tale of a monstrous beast and a complex maze that has captivated imaginations for centuries. While the myth itself is a fascinating story, the real mystery lies in whether the Labyrinth of Crete was a purely fictional tale or based on a real physical structure that has yet to be fully understood. Feel the calm deepen now, the quiet of the night enveloping you in its gentle embrace. Let the wonders of the ancient world recede into the peaceful shadows of your mind, like the treasures of a sunken ship settling on the ocean floor. The gears of the Antikythera mechanism, now just a whisper in the dark, have done their work, guiding you into a state of profound rest. With each slow, steady breath, you are a traveler moving through time, ready to uncover the next piece of a long-forgotten story, a story of a hero, a monster, and a maze that has haunted the human imagination for thousands of years. The legend of the Labyrinth of Crete is one of the most famous myths from ancient Greece. The story, in its most well-known form, tells of King Minos of Crete and the horrific creature, the Minotaur, which was half man, half bull. This monstrous beast was the result of a divine curse on Minos's family, and in order to hide it from the world, the king commissioned the great inventor Daedalus to construct a prison for it. Daedalus designed and built the labyrinth, a complex maze so intricate that once a person was inside, they would be unable to find their way out. The monster was confined there, and every year as a tribute from Athens, 7 young men and 7 young women were sent into the labyrinth to be devoured by the Minotaur. This dreadful ritual continued until the hero Theseus arrived. With the help of King Minos's daughter Ariadne, who gave him a ball of thread to retrace his steps, Theseus was able to navigate the maze, slay the Minotaur, and lead his people to freedom. The story is a classic Greek myth about heroism and triumph over darkness. But was the labyrinth just a myth? Archaeologists have been asking this question for over a century. The most obvious place to look for the labyrinth is, of course, on the island of Crete. And the most famous site on the island is the ancient Minoan palace of Knossos. In the early 1900s, the British archaeologist Sir Arthur Evans began excavating the ruins of Knossos, and what he uncovered was nothing short of astonishing. The palace was not a single building, but a sprawling multi-story complex of courtyards, corridors, workshops, and living quarters. Its layout was incredibly complex and confusing, a veritable warren of passages that seemed to have no logical plan. Evans, struck by the palace's intricate design, immediately dubbed it the Labyrinth. The word labyrinth itself has a fascinating origin. While we use it today to mean any complex maze, its root is thought to be from the ancient word labris, which was the double-headed axe that was a prominent sacred symbol in Minoan religion. The symbol of the double-headed axe was found everywhere in the palace of Knossos, carved into stone and painted on walls. So, the labyrinth could have meant the house of the double axe, referring to the palace itself, which was the religious and administrative center of the Minoan civilization. The sheer complexity of the palace and its association with the labris made Evans and many others believe that this was indeed the real-life inspiration for the myth. But was the Minotaur a real monster, or was it a symbolic representation of something else? The Minotaur was half man and half bull, and the bull was an incredibly important religious symbol for the Minoans. Their art is filled with images of bulls, and there is evidence of what is called bull leaping, a ritual in which acrobats would literally grab the horns of a charging bull and somersault over its back. This was a central part of Minoan culture, so it's not a stretch to imagine that a foreign civilization, like the mainland Greeks, might have seen these rituals and misunderstood them, transforming a sacred animal into a fearsome monster. The myth of the Minotaur could be a cultural misunderstanding, a distant and confused memory of Minoan religious practices that were alien to the early Greeks. The tribute of young men and women from Athens could have been a real historical event, perhaps a forced tribute to the more powerful Minoan Empire. It is entirely possible that these young people were not sacrificed to a monster, but were instead sent to Crete to participate in these dangerous bull-leaping rituals, which were a form of entertainment or religious ceremony. The death of Theseus in the labyrinth would then be the symbolic ending of a subservient relationship, with Athens finally breaking free from Crete's dominance. However, the identification of Knossos as the labyrinth has its own set of problems. For one, while the palace is complex, it's not a true maze in the way we think of one. There are clear paths and corridors that lead to specific rooms and courtyards. It is not designed to be an unsolvable puzzle. So if Knossos wasn't the labyrinth, what was? Some scholars believe that the labyrinth was an entirely different structure, a cave or a series of tunnels that has yet to be discovered. Crete is full of natural caves and underground passages, and it's not impossible that a forgotten network of these was the inspiration for the myth. Another theory suggests that the labyrinth was not a physical place at all, but a metaphorical one. It was the name for the royal court of King Minos, a confusing and difficult place to navigate for outsiders, much like a bureaucratic or political maze. The mystery deepens when we consider the stories that came after. The hero Theseus, after slaying the Minotaur and escaping the labyrinth, is said to have abandoned Ariadne, the woman who saved him, on the island of Naxos. His actions here have been debated for millennia, and while this is a myth, it holds a deeper mystery about the nature of heroism and the complexity of human relationships in a heroic age. The story of the labyrinth and the Minotaur, whether based on a real palace or a metaphorical puzzle, serves as a powerful reminder of how history and myth can become so intertwined that it's impossible to separate them. The physical ruins of Knossos stand as a testament to the sophistication of the Minoans, but the story of the labyrinth is a testament to the power of human storytelling. The question of its reality remains unanswered. Was it a physical place, a palace, or a cave? Or was it a narrative created to explain a foreign culture and a painful historical memory? We may never know for sure, but the very act of trying to figure it out allows us to step back into the ancient world and experience a piece of the wonder and the mystery that the Greeks themselves must have felt. And as we journey further into this world of unsolved riddles, we come to a mystery that has puzzled scholars for generations: the identity of the Sea Peoples. This group of mysterious marauders is credited with causing the collapse of several major Bronze Age civilizations, including the mighty Mycenaeans. But who were they, and where did they come from? Their story is one of destruction and disappearance, a phantom menace that seemingly wiped out an entire era of human history. We are now sailing into a new mystery, one that speaks not of creation, but of a great and sudden collapse, an entire era brought to its knees by a shadow from the sea. Let my voice be the calm current that carries you into the story of the Sea Peoples. The Late Bronze Age, a period from roughly 1600 to 1200 BCE, was an age of interconnected empires. The Mycenaeans in Greece were powerful and sophisticated, building grand citadels and engaging in trade and conflict with the Hittite Empire in Anatolia, the New Kingdom of Egypt, and the great empires of the Near East. It was a time of epic heroes and grand palaces, of chariot warfare and international diplomacy. But then, as if a switch had been flipped, this entire world system collapsed. Palaces were burned, cities were abandoned, and trade routes that had existed for centuries were severed. This event, known as the Bronze Age collapse, remains one of the greatest mysteries of ancient history, and at the heart of it all is a mysterious group known only as the Sea Peoples. Our primary source of information about the Sea Peoples comes from Egyptian records, specifically from inscriptions at the mortuary temple of Pharaoh Ramesses III at Medinet Habu. The inscriptions detail a massive, coordinated invasion by a confederation of different peoples who attacked Egypt by both land and sea around 1177 BCE. The pharaoh's records describe them as foreign countries making a conspiracy in their islands. They were a formidable force, and the inscriptions list their names, which sound almost like a fever dream of different cultures: the Peliset, the Cheker, the Shekelesh, the Denyen, the Weshesh, and the Ekwesh. The pharaoh boasts of his victory over them, but the tone of the inscriptions is one of barely averted catastrophe. The records describe how the Sea Peoples came from their lands and came over the sea, bringing devastation wherever they went. But who were they? The Egyptian records never tell us. They are a force of destruction without a clear origin. Historians have been trying to solve this puzzle for over a century, poring over every shred of evidence for clues to their identity. One of the most compelling theories is that they were displaced populations from the collapsing empires of the Late Bronze Age. As cities were destroyed by earthquakes, famine, or internal conflict, entire populations would have been forced to flee their homes, turning to piracy and raiding simply to survive. It's a bit like a game of falling dominoes, where the collapse of one empire sends a shockwave that displaces its people, who in turn cause the collapse of another. This could explain why the Sea Peoples weren't a single nation but a loose confederation of different groups. Let's look at some of the names. The Peliset are often identified with the Philistines of the Old Testament, a people who settled in the coastal areas of modern-day Israel and Gaza after the collapse. The Cheker are thought to have settled in the area of modern-day Israel and Lebanon, and the Shekelesh may have found a new home in Sicily. The names Denyen and Ekwesh are particularly intriguing because they sound remarkably similar to Danaans and Achaeans, which were names used by Homer to describe the Greeks in the Trojan War. This has led some scholars to theorize that the Sea Peoples were in fact Mycenaean Greeks, or at least a significant part of the confederation was. Perhaps the Mycenaeans, weakened by their own internal strife and natural disasters, turned to raiding and piracy, just as their former enemies and allies were doing. The mystery of their identity is compounded by the fact that they seemingly vanished from history after the Bronze Age collapse. They don't appear in later historical records under these names, which makes it even harder to trace their origins or their eventual fate. Did they simply settle down and assimilate into the new cultures they encountered? Or did their identity as Sea Peoples simply dissolve once the crisis had passed? The lack of archaeological evidence, aside from the destruction they left in their wake, is another confounding factor. We have no clear cities or burial sites that we can definitively label as belonging to the Sea Peoples. They were a force of pure, unadulterated chaos, a phantom menace that existed only in the moment of destruction. What caused the Bronze Age collapse is itself a part of this mystery. The Sea Peoples were likely a symptom, not the sole cause. A combination of factors, including climate change leading to widespread drought and famine, internal rebellions, and new forms of warfare such as iron technology, likely all played a part. The Iron Age dawned on the ashes of the Bronze Age. The knowledge of how to make bronze, which required a complex network of trade to acquire copper and tin, was lost or forgotten as those networks collapsed. The new era was one of smaller, more localized kingdoms. The story of the Sea Peoples is one of history's most profound blank spaces. They are the boogeymen of the ancient world, a shadowy threat that brought down a world of heroes and kings. But their story is more than just a tale of destruction. It is a profound lesson in the fragility of complex civilizations. The grand, interconnected empires of the late Bronze Age were not as strong as they appeared, and when faced with a perfect storm of environmental disaster and internal weakness, they crumbled. The Sea Peoples were the human face of that collapse, a force so enigmatic and so destructive that their true identity remains one of the great unsolved Greek mysteries. And as we continue our journey, we will see that even the most famous Greek stories have their own dark, unexplained corners, where the line between history and legend becomes impossibly thin. Settle deeper into the quiet, feeling the peace of the night settle around you. The collapse of empires and the mystery of the Sea Peoples are now just fading echoes, carried away on a gentle tide of sleep. Let your mind become a calm harbor, a place where the next story can arrive without effort. A story about a prophecy, a betrayal, and an act of violence that has baffled historians and archaeologists for centuries. We are now sailing toward the most iconic of all Greek wars, the Trojan War, and a mystery that lies at its very heart. The story of the Trojan War is familiar to us all. It's the tale of a decade-long conflict between the Achaeans, or Greeks, and the city of Troy, sparked by the abduction of the beautiful Helen by the Trojan prince Paris. The epic poems of Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey, have immortalized heroes like Achilles and Hector, and have given us a window into a world of honor, revenge, and divine intervention. For centuries, however, many scholars believed the Trojan War to be nothing more than a myth, a grand tale spun by bards that had no basis in historical fact. The city of Troy itself was considered a fictional place. This all changed in the 1870s when a self-taught German archaeologist, Heinrich Schliemann, became obsessed with proving the reality of Homer's epics. Using the Iliad as his guide, he began excavating a hill in modern-day Turkey known as Hisarlik. He was convinced this was the site of ancient Troy. What he found was not one city but many, built on top of one another over thousands of years. The layers represented different periods in history, a kind of archaeological wedding cake. Schliemann identified one of the layers which showed evidence of massive destruction by fire as the Troy of Homer's epic. His discovery electrified the world, and suddenly the Trojan War was no longer just a myth, it was a real historical event. But Schliemann's work also created a new mystery. The archaeological evidence for a long, decade-long siege is at best inconclusive. The destruction layer he identified, known as Troy Seitha, does show evidence of a major fire, but the lack of extensive weaponry and human remains from a large battle has puzzled scholars. The idea of a 10-year siege is logistically improbable for the time period. A decade-long war would have required a massive, sustained effort that would have been incredibly difficult to maintain. So, if the war was real, what was its true nature? Was it a series of smaller skirmishes and raids rather than one continuous siege? Or was the scale of the war exaggerated by Homer for epic effect? The greatest mystery, however, lies in the heart of the story itself. The Trojan horse. According to the legend, after a decade of fruitless siege, the Greeks pretended to give up and sailed away, leaving a giant wooden horse as a peace offering. The Trojans, despite the warnings of the prophetess Cassandra and the priest Laocoon, dragged the horse inside their city walls. That night, Greek soldiers, who were hiding inside the hollow belly of the horse, came out, opened the city gates, and let in the rest of the Greek army, who had sailed back under the cover of darkness. The city was sacked, and the Trojan War was brought to a bloody end. For a long time, the Trojan horse was seen as a brilliant literary device, a perfect metaphor for cunning and deception. But many scholars now believe it may have been based on a real event, but not a literal wooden horse. One theory suggests that the horse was not a statue, but a siege engine, a battering ram shaped like a horse's head, which was used to smash through the city gates. The story of the Greek soldiers hiding inside could be a metaphorical way of describing how the Greeks used the siege engine to break into the city. Another theory posits that the horse was a symbol for a natural disaster. Poseidon, the Greek god of the sea and horses, was also the god of earthquakes. The Trojan horse could have been a literary stand-in for a devastating earthquake that weakened the city walls and allowed the Greeks to finally breach them. The idea of a horse being the cause of the city's fall would be a reference to Poseidon's role in the event. Another fascinating possibility is that the Trojan horse was a brilliant piece of espionage. Homer's epics were written centuries after the events they describe, and the story could have been a dramatized version of a more subtle act of betrayal. Perhaps a Greek spy or a Trojan traitor opened the city gates from the inside, or perhaps the Greeks bribed a guard to let them in. The story of the Trojan horse could be a metaphorical way of describing this kind of covert operation, with the horse symbolizing the gift or the bribe that opened the city to the enemy. The mystery of the Trojan horse and the Trojan War itself forces us to confront the nature of history and storytelling. How much of what we think we know is a literal account of events, and how much is a dramatized, metaphorical, or simply misinterpreted version of the truth? The ruins of Troy stand as a testament to the fact that something significant happened there, but the exact details of that event are lost to the mists of time. We have the story, but the truth of the horse remains a fascinating puzzle, a riddle that challenges us to look beyond the surface of a tale we thought we knew so well. And as we leave the bloody fields of Troy, our journey takes us to another, perhaps even more haunting mystery. It is a story of a lost world, an entire civilization that vanished without a trace, leaving behind only strange artifacts and enigmatic symbols. This is the story of the Cycladic culture, a silent people of the Aegean, and the puzzle of their eerie marble figurines. Allow yourself to sink into a deeper, more peaceful state of slumber. The heroic tales and grand mysteries of Troy have served their purpose, gently guiding you into a space of profound quiet. Now, we leave the mainland and the epic battles behind and drift toward the silent, sun-drenched islands of the Aegean. Here, in the quiet heart of the Cyclades, a new mystery awaits, a puzzle told not in words but in stone. Let your mind be a calm sea, ready to receive the next story, the story of a people who have left behind a profound silence and some of the most hauntingly beautiful art of the ancient world. Before the great Mycenaean palaces and the Minoan civilization, there was another culture that flourished in the Aegean Sea, in a group of islands known as the Cyclades. This civilization, now simply called the Cycladic culture, existed from roughly 3,200 to 2000 BCE. They were a people of the sea, skilled navigators, and traders who lived in small settlements on islands like Naxos, Paros, and Delos. Yet, despite their long existence, we know astonishingly little about them. They left no written records, no great palaces, and no grand monuments to their kings or queens. Their story is a mystery wrapped in a great silence. What they did leave behind, however, are their incredible Cycladic figurines. These are small, elegant and highly stylized statues carved from the island's abundant white marble. They are the most recognizable artifacts of this civilization. The figurines are almost always female, with a simple abstract form, a flat plank-like body, folded arms, and a long, elegant neck, supporting an oval head with a single, prominent nose. The lack of detailed features, no mouth, no eyes, and often no ears, gives them a haunting minimalist beauty that feels strangely modern. These figurines were found in graves, and they range in size from tiny miniatures to larger, almost life-sized statues. The greatest mystery surrounding these figurines is their purpose and meaning. Why were they created in such large numbers? And what did they represent to the people who made them? Were they idols of a goddess, votive offerings to the gods, or representations of the deceased? There are many theories, but no definitive answers. One theory suggests they were fertility goddesses, or symbols of the Great Mother. The emphasis on the female form, with sometimes exaggerated breasts and bellies, points toward a connection with fertility and the cycle of life. They may have been placed in graves to ensure a journey to the afterlife or to bless the deceased with rebirth. This idea is compelling, but not all of the figurines show these features, and some are clearly male, though far less common. Another theory posits that they were funerary objects, perhaps serving as companions for the dead in the afterlife. The fact that many were found in graves supports this idea. They could have been abstract representations of the deceased, a stand-in for the person who was buried. The folded arms, in particular, could symbolize a state of repose or eternal rest. The eerie, silent faces of the figurines, with their lack of expression, could be a deliberate choice to convey the quiet, eternal state of death. A third, more complex theory suggests that they were ritual tools or objects used in ceremonies. The fact that some figurines show signs of being broken and repaired could suggest that they were used over and over again in rituals. Perhaps they were passed down through generations, cherished family heirlooms that were used in ceremonies of birth, death, or marriage. The stark, abstract nature of their design might have made them suitable for a wide range of symbolic purposes. The mystery is deepened by the fact that the Cycladic culture itself vanished around 2000 BCE. Their unique artistic style and way of life seemed to disappear, giving way to the rising power of the Minoan civilization on Crete. What caused their collapse? Was it environmental change, a shift in trade routes, or was it a conquest by their more powerful neighbors? The answer is lost to history, just like the meaning of their beautiful silent figurines. The Cycladic people left no other clues. Their language is unknown, their religion a complete puzzle, and their daily life a matter of pure speculation. The Cycladic figurines are not just ancient art. They are a profound question mark left by a lost civilization. They are a haunting glimpse into the spiritual and artistic world of a people who lived in a completely different time. Yet their art speaks to us on a visceral, almost emotional level. We may never know for sure what they meant, but the act of wondering, the act of trying to understand the silent language of these marble figures, is a journey in itself. It forces us to confront the fact that even in the modern age, with all our technology and knowledge, there are still entire worlds that have been lost to us forever. The silence of the Cycladic culture is a powerful reminder that history is not a continuous line, but a series of broken fragments. And sometimes, all we have left are the ghosts. And as we continue our journey, we find ourselves on the island of Crete once again. But this time, we are not searching for a monster in a labyrinth. Instead, we are looking for the key to one of the most frustrating and intriguing mysteries of the ancient world. Linear A, the untranslated language of the Minoans. Drift now into an even deeper, more serene level of rest. The marble figures of the Cyclades are a faint memory, their silence now a part of the quiet darkness that surrounds you. As you sink further into sleep, we leave the realm of art and enter the world of language, or rather, the puzzle of a language we cannot read. This is a story of a lost script, a silent civilization, and the tantalizing clues left behind on tablets of clay. Let my voice be the final guide into this mystery, the mystery of Linear A code that has yet to be broken. The story of Linear A begins once again on the island of Crete, the heartland of the Minoan civilization. In the early 20th century, archaeologists began to uncover clay tablets and other artifacts inscribed with a strange, unknown script. This script was unlike anything they had ever seen, and it was quickly given a name by Sir Arthur Evans, the same archaeologist who excavated the palace of Knossos. He called it Linear A to distinguish it from a later script he found, which he named Linear B. Linear A is a syllabary, which means that each symbol represents a syllable, a combination of a consonant and a vowel, rather than a single letter. Over 7,000 inscriptions have been found, primarily on small clay tablets, but also on pots, seals, and other objects. The tablets seem to be administrative records, lists of goods, and tallies of items, much like the grocery lists of an ancient world. But we can't read a single word of it. For decades, scholars have tried to crack the code of Linear A, but it remains one of the great unsolved puzzles of ancient history. The main reason for this difficulty is that we don't know the language it represents. Think of it this way. If you found a script written in the English alphabet, but the words were in a language you didn't know, like Finnish or Japanese, you could pronounce the words, but you wouldn't be able to understand their meaning. With Linear A, we don't even have the pronunciation. We have the symbols, but we don't know what sounds they make, and we don't know the underlying language. The later script, Linear B, which was used by the Mycenaean Greeks, was successfully deciphered in the 1950s by Michael Ventris. He discovered that the language of Linear B was an early form of Greek. This was a monumental breakthrough that gave us a direct window into the world of the Mycenaeans. It was a victory for linguistics and archaeology. But unfortunately, the decipherment of Linear B did not help with Linear A. While some of the symbols look similar, they are not the same, and scholars have concluded that Linear A and Linear B likely represent two different languages. So, the mystery remains. What language did the Minoans speak? The untranslated script is a silent testament to a world we can't fully understand. We can see their beautiful frescoes, their intricate palaces, and their elegant pottery, but we can't hear their voices. We don't know what they called themselves, what their gods were named, or what their daily conversations sounded like. The lack of a translated language leaves a massive hole in our understanding of this brilliant civilization. This is a different kind of mystery from the others we've explored. It's not a mystery of a lost place or a forgotten people, but a mystery of a lost voice. The Minoans are there. Their cities are found, but they are muted, their stories locked behind an unbreakable code. The key to solving this mystery would be to find a bilingual text, a document that has both Linear A and a known language, just as the Rosetta Stone was the key to deciphering Egyptian hieroglyphs. But no such text has ever been found. The silence of Linear A is one of the most poignant riddles of the ancient world. It's a reminder that no matter how much we dig, how much we analyze, some secrets may simply be lost to time forever. The untranslated tablets are like a great library with all its books bound shut. We can see the covers and even the titles, but we can never read the stories inside. The Minoan world is waiting for us, a silent, beautiful ghost of a civilization, just beyond our reach. And as we drift further into the realm of unsolved riddles, we leave the Mediterranean and venture north to the ancient land of Thrace. This is a story of a legendary musician, a journey into the underworld, and a mystery that has puzzled historians for millennia. The true identity of Orpheus, a figure so shrouded in myth that it is impossible to know where the man ends and the legend begins. Relax, and let the unresolved riddles of the past and the silence of the Minoans recede into the peaceful shadows of your mind. We are moving away from the quiet of the islands and journeying to a land of mountains and myth, a place where a single voice could charm the gods and bring down the very barriers between the living and the dead. As you drift, let my voice be the melody that guides you into the story of Orpheus, the legendary musician whose very existence is one of Greece's most profound mysteries. The name Orpheus is synonymous with music, poetry, and tragedy. He was a mythical figure from the region of Thrace, a land that lay north of Greece, now part of modern-day Bulgaria, Turkey, and Greece. The myths tell us he was a poet and musician of unparalleled skill. His music, played on a lyre, was said to have the power to charm not only humans and animals, but also the very trees and stones, making them move and dance to his tune. He was one of the Argonauts who sailed with Jason to find the Golden Fleece, and his music was so beautiful it was said to have drowned out the seductive songs of the sirens, saving his fellow sailors from a watery grave. But the most famous story of Orpheus is his descent into the underworld to retrieve his beloved wife Eurydice. After she died from a snake bite, Orpheus was so grief-stricken that he traveled to the gates of Hades. There, with his divine music, he charmed Charon, the ferryman of the dead, and Cerberus, the three-headed dog, and was granted passage into the land of the dead. He played his lyre for Hades and Persephone, the king and queen of the underworld, and his music was so moving that they wept and agreed to let him take Eurydice back to the land of the living on one condition. He must walk ahead of her and not look back until they both reach the surface. Of course, at the very last moment, overcome with doubt, Orpheus looked back, and Eurydice was swallowed by the shadows, lost to him forever. He was then said to have been killed by a group of wild women, the Maenads, who tore him to pieces because he rejected their advances and mourned only for his lost love. His head and lyre were said to have floated down a river and washed up on the island of Lesbos, where an oracle and a music cult were established in his honor. This is a powerful, tragic myth, but the mystery lies in whether Orpheus was a real person, a sort of historical figure whose story became so embellished that he became a godlike being. Was there a real-life musician, a great poet or prophet from Thrace, who inspired these tales? The evidence is scant and entirely circumstantial. While Orpheus is a central figure in Greek mythology and religion, there are no definitive historical records of his existence. He is mentioned in ancient Greek and Roman texts, but always in the context of legend. What makes this a mystery, and not just a myth, is the existence of Orphism, a religious movement that flourished in ancient Greece. The followers of Orphism revered Orpheus as their founder and central figure. They believed in a number of concepts that were radical for their time, including the immortality of the soul, the idea of reincarnation, and a set of ascetic practices to purify the soul. Their beliefs are laid out in a series of texts known as the Orphic hymns and Orphic writings, which they attributed to Orpheus himself. But these texts were written much later, and it's highly unlikely that a single person wrote them all. So the mystery is a question of origin. Was Orpheus a real person who founded this religion? Was he a historical figure whose wisdom was so profound that his name became the centerpiece of a new faith? Or was he a completely mythical figure, a sort of invented prophet who was used to give an air of legitimacy to a new set of religious beliefs? It's a bit like trying to find the historical King Arthur. There might have been a chieftain who inspired the legend, but the real man is forever lost in the mists of folklore and myth. The lack of any contemporary historical account of his life makes it impossible to know for sure. The story of Orpheus is also a testament to the power of music and art in the ancient world. The Greeks believed that music had a divine, almost magical quality. It could heal, inspire, and move people in ways that words alone could not. The myth of Orpheus is a beautiful expression of this belief, and whether he was real or not, his legend profoundly influenced Greek culture, philosophy, and religion. He is a ghost from the past, a silent note in a melody we can't fully hear. And as we leave the land of Thrace and the haunting music of Orpheus, we turn our attention to one of the most famous archaeological finds in all of Greece, the so-called Mask of Agamemnon. This magnificent funeral mask was hailed as a direct link to the heroes of the Trojan War, but the story behind its discovery and the questions surrounding its authenticity are a mystery in themselves. Sink even deeper into the profound stillness of the night. The ghostly music of Orpheus and the lost voices of the ancient world are now just soft echoes in the distance, a part of the quiet that envelops you. As you journey further into sleep, we arrive at a mystery that challenges our very idea of history, a story of a golden treasure, a famous name, and a discovery that might have been too good to be true. Let my voice be your guide as we uncover the secrets behind the Mask of Agamemnon. The story of this magnificent artifact begins with the same man who searched for the city of Troy, Heinrich Schliemann. After his success in finding Troy, Schliemann turned his attention to another legendary city, Mycenae, in southern Greece. This was the city of King Agamemnon, the powerful leader who, according to Homer, commanded the Greek forces in the Trojan War. In 1876, Schliemann began excavating the site, and what he found was incredible. He discovered a group of shaft graves, a series of ancient royal burial sites filled with unimaginable riches, gold jewelry, ornate weapons, and most famously, a series of golden funeral masks laid over the faces of the deceased. Schliemann, ever the romantic and driven by his belief in the literal truth of Homer's epics, was convinced he had found the grave of the legendary king himself. He excitedly wired the king of Greece, stating, "I have gazed upon the face of Agamemnon." The most striking of the masks was a beautiful, full-bearded piece crafted from solid gold. It was a masterpiece of Mycenaean craftsmanship, and it immediately became a symbol of the hero of the Trojan War. The world was captivated. For the first time, people felt they had a direct connection to the heroic age of Greek mythology. The mask was so powerful in its ability to bring a myth to life that it was named the Mask of Agamemnon. But there's a problem, a big one. The mystery of the mask isn't just about its beauty, it's about its authenticity and its date. As more careful archaeological work was done, scholars began to question Schliemann's dramatic claims. The graves where the masks were found date to around 1550 BCE, a period hundreds of years before the traditional dating of the Trojan War, which is believed to have taken place around 1250 BCE. It is highly unlikely that this mask belonged to the historical figure who led the Greeks at Troy, if such a person existed. It is a stunning artifact from the Mycenaean civilization, but it is not from the time of Agamemnon. Furthermore, there is a fierce debate among archaeologists about whether the mask is genuine or not. Schliemann was known for his unorthodox excavation methods and his dramatic flair. He was not a trained archaeologist, and his desire to prove Homer's stories right may have led him to some questionable practices. The Mask of Agamemnon stands out from the other four masks found in the same grave circle. The other masks are less detailed, more stylized, and are quite different in their artistic style. The Mask of Agamemnon, with its finely detailed beard and face, looks almost too perfect, too much like a heroic king from a later era. This has led some to suggest that Schliemann might have forged it, or at least altered it, to make it look more impressive and to fit his narrative. The debate over this is ongoing. While there is no definitive proof of forgery, the circumstantial evidence is enough to cast a significant shadow of doubt over the mask. So the mystery is twofold. First, while the mask is a real Mycenaean artifact, it almost certainly does not belong to Agamemnon. It is a mislabeled treasure from an earlier period. Second, we cannot be entirely sure if the mask in its current form is a genuine artifact from the ancient world or a product of modern manipulation. The story of the Mask of Agamemnon is a profound lesson in how myth and archaeology can become tangled. Schliemann's passion for proving the myths true led him to a magnificent discovery, but his romantic view of the past may have colored his interpretation of the finds, and perhaps even led him to unethical practices. The mask, now one of the most famous archaeological objects in the world, is a symbol of both the wonder of discovery and the danger of allowing our preconceived notions to dictate what we believe we have found. The face we gaze upon is not that of a legendary king, but the face of a mystery that continues to puzzle scholars and challenges us to look beyond the surface of a golden treasure. And now, as we continue our journey, we move from the grand palaces of Mycenae to a remote and sacred place, a temple that held one of the greatest secrets of the ancient world. We will explore the mystery of the Eleusinian Mysteries, a secret ritual that promised its initiates a better afterlife, but whose true nature remains a complete and total secret. Drift now, letting the questions and doubts about golden masks and lost kings fade into the quiet background of your mind. We are leaving the world of archaeology and entering a realm of faith and mystery, a place where the most profound secrets were not written down, but were whispered from one person to another. As you sink into a deeper state of rest, we journey to a place of pilgrimage, a place that held the promise of a better afterlife, a promise that has been kept so well that we know almost nothing about it. We are now at the heart of one of the most enduring mysteries of the ancient world, the Eleusinian Mysteries. For nearly 2,000 years, from about 1600 BCE to the 4th century CE, the Eleusinian Mysteries were the most famous and revered religious rites of ancient Greece. Held annually in the town of Eleusis near Athens, these were a series of secret initiation ceremonies for the cult of Demeter and Persephone. It wasn't an exclusive club. Anyone could participate, regardless of gender, social status, or nationality, as long as they could speak Greek and hadn't committed murder. The rites were so important and so widely attended that some of the greatest minds of the ancient world, including Plato and Aristotle, are believed to have been initiates. The mysteries promised its followers a sense of purpose in life, and more importantly, a glorious existence in the afterlife. The promise was so powerful that it was said that an initiate will have a better lot in the next world than those who have not been initiated. But here's the mystery. We don't know what they did. The Eleusinian Mysteries were a genuine, true-to-the-word secret. The initiates, who numbered in the thousands, were sworn to an absolute vow of silence, and they kept it. Not a single reliable source from antiquity gives a clear account of the main rituals. The punishment for revealing the secrets was death. This is an incredible feat of secrecy, a testament to the power of the cult and the fear of its consequences. It's like a massive society of people who all know a secret but never ever tell. We can piece together a few things from what has been written. The rites were part of a long 9-day festival that took place in the autumn. It began in Athens with a sacred march along a road to Eleusis. The initiates purified themselves by bathing in the sea and by performing sacrifices. The climax of the ritual, known as the Telesterion, took place in a great hall in Eleusis, a large, windowless building where the most secret rituals were performed. Here, the initiates entered and witnessed something so profound that it was said to change their lives forever. But what was it? This is where the theories begin. Many scholars believe that the mysteries involved a sacred play or a dramatization of the myth of Demeter and Persephone. The myth tells the story of how Hades, the god of the underworld, abducted Persephone, the daughter of Demeter, the goddess of the harvest. Demeter, in her grief, cursed the earth, and nothing would grow until her daughter was returned. Zeus intervened, and a compromise was reached. Persephone would spend part of the year in the underworld with Hades, and the rest of the year on earth with her mother. This myth was a powerful allegory for the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, and it's highly likely that the initiates witnessed a ritual reenactment of it. However, the more fascinating and more plausible theory is that the mysteries involved the use of a psychedelic substance. Some scholars believe that the initiates drank a special potion, a brew called the kykeon, which contained a psychoactive ingredient. This could have been a substance derived from ergot, a fungus that grows on barley and rye, which contains chemicals similar to those in LSD. The visual and emotional hallucinations produced by such a substance, when taken in the dark, with a group of people, and in a sacred space, could explain the profound, life-changing visions that the initiates experienced. It would explain why the experience was so difficult to put into words, and why it was so sacred. This theory, while controversial, is gaining more support. The mystery of the Eleusinian mysteries is a powerful reminder that not all of history is written down. Some of the most profound human experiences are not found in books, but in shared moments of faith, in spiritual journeys that leave no trace behind. We know that these rituals were a huge part of Greek life, and that they gave meaning and comfort to thousands of people for centuries, but their true nature is a ghost from the past that we can only guess at. And as we leave the sacred precincts of Eleusis, we turn to a different kind of puzzle, a puzzle that is not about faith, but about numbers. We will now journey into the mystery of the Gordian knot, a legendary knot that could not be untied, and a prophecy that has baffled historians and strategists for centuries. Continue your descent into a state of profound calm. The sacred secrets of the Eleusinian mysteries and the hushed whispers of ancient pilgrims are now a fading echo carried away on the tide of your deepening sleep. As you journey onward, we leave the world of faith and enter the realm of legend and strategy, to a riddle whose solution would decide the fate of an empire. Let my voice be the steady thread that guides you into the story of the Gordian knot, a legendary puzzle and one of the most famous acts of decisive genius in history. The story of the Gordian knot is a tale from the heart of Phrygia, an ancient kingdom in Anatolia, a land that is part of modern-day Turkey. The myth tells of a time when the Phrygians were without a king. An oracle in their capital city of Telmessus declared that the next man to enter the city riding in an ox cart would be their king. The very next day, a humble farmer named Gordias, who was riding into the city on his cart, fulfilled the prophecy. He was crowned king, and in gratitude he dedicated his cart to the god Zeus, tying it with an incredibly intricate knot to a pole in the temple. This knot was no ordinary knot. It was said to be so complex that no one could untie it. Over time, a new prophecy arose. Whoever could untie the Gordian knot would become the ruler of all Asia. For centuries, would-be conquerors and heroes tried to solve the puzzle, all of them failing. The knot became a symbol of an impossible problem, a riddle that could not be solved by conventional means. This takes us to the year 333 BCE, and the arrival of a young and ambitious military commander who was on a mission to conquer the known world. His name was Alexander the Great. Alexander arrived in the Phrygian capital, which was then known as Gordium. He saw the legendary knot and was told of the prophecy. He did not spend hours or days trying to untie it. He was a man of action, not of patience. He looked at the impossible tangle, and instead of trying to follow the rules, he rewrote them. According to the most popular account, he simply drew his sword and with a single decisive stroke sliced the knot in half. He had not untied it, but he had solved the problem, and in a way that no one had ever considered. The second version of the story is even more fascinating. It suggests that instead of cutting the knot, he simply pulled out the pole that the knot was tied to, unraveling the whole thing in one motion. In both versions, Alexander's action was a testament to his brilliant and unorthodox thinking. He wasn't constrained by the rules that had stumped everyone before him. He proved that sometimes the only way to solve a complex problem is to think completely outside the box. The mystery of the Gordian knot isn't whether Alexander actually cut it. That part of the story, though a legend, is widely accepted as a representation of his character. The real mystery is the knot itself. Was it a genuine historical object? Or was it an elaborate piece of propaganda? Was the story of the knot and the prophecy created after Alexander's victory to legitimize his conquest? Historians and archaeologists have never found any physical evidence of the knot, and its historical existence is a matter of intense debate. It could have been a true artifact that simply didn't survive the centuries, or it could have been a powerful symbolic tale, a metaphor for a political or military challenge that Alexander overcame. It's a bit like the story of George Washington and the cherry tree. The truth is less important than the lesson it teaches about the person's character. The Gordian knot mystery is also about the power of myth-making in ancient times. Alexander was a master of public relations. He understood the power of a good story to inspire his troops and to intimidate his enemies. The story of him solving an impossible riddle and fulfilling a great prophecy would have been a potent tool for a young commander on the cusp of conquering an empire. It would have shown his followers that he was divinely ordained to rule, and that his fate was tied to the very fabric of prophecy. It turns the mundane act of a military campaign into a heroic quest. The story of the Gordian knot, whether a real event or a powerful legend, is a testament to Alexander the Great's brilliant and unconventional mind. He didn't just solve a puzzle, he redefined it, and that act of decisive genius, whether it happened with a sword or a simple tug, has resonated throughout history. And as we leave the story of the Gordian knot, we move to a different kind of mystery. A mystery that is not about an object or a person, but about a place. We are now heading to the island of Santorini, where a beautiful city was preserved by volcanic ash, much like Pompeii, but which has left us with an even bigger puzzle, the enigma of the Akrotiri frescoes. Drift now, letting the legends of kings and their ingenious solutions fade into the quiet background of your mind. We are moving to a different kind of mystery, one preserved not in legend, but in stone and ash. We are heading to the island of Santorini, the same island we discussed as a possible location for Atlantis. Here, a city, buried by a volcanic eruption, has preserved a unique puzzle that challenges our understanding of the ancient world. Let my voice be the gentle current that carries you into the story of the Akrotiri frescoes and the profound questions they raise. Around 1600 BCE, the volcanic island of Thera, which we now know as Santorini, erupted in a cataclysmic event. This eruption was so powerful, it blew out the center of the island and created massive tsunamis that devastated the region. It also buried a thriving Minoan-influenced port city, Akrotiri, in layers of volcanic ash and pumice. This ash, much like the one that covered Pompeii, acted as a time capsule, preserving the city and its contents in remarkable detail. When archaeologists began excavating the site in the mid-20th century, they found a city frozen in time. The multi-story buildings, the sophisticated plumbing, the fine pottery, and the elaborate frescoes on the walls all spoke of a highly advanced and prosperous civilization. But it was the frescoes that captured the imagination of the world. These vibrant, colorful paintings depicted scenes of daily life, nature, and what appears to be a major naval expedition. And here lies the central mystery of acrotiri, the purpose and meaning of these frescoes. The most famous of them is the flotilla fresco, a long, continuous painting that wraps around a room and shows a fleet of ships sailing between a number of different settlements and landscapes. The ships are incredibly detailed, with sailors, passengers, and elaborate sails. One of the settlements appears to be a sophisticated port city, with large multi-story buildings and crowds of people on the shore. Another looks more primitive, with what appear to be armed warriors and a more rugged landscape. The mystery is this: what does the flotilla fresco depict? Is it a historical record of a real event, perhaps a major expedition or a trading journey? The detail is so meticulous that it's tempting to see it as a documentary of a specific moment in time. The different styles of settlements could represent different cultures or trading partners. If this is true, the fresco would be an invaluable historical document, giving us a unique window into the maritime world of the Bronze Age Aegean. It could show us what trade routes were like, what ships looked like, and what the relationship was between the different peoples of the region. However, another theory suggests that the fresco is not a literal historical account, but a symbolic or mythological narrative. It could be depicting a religious procession, a journey to the land of the dead, or even a symbolic representation of a seasonal cycle. The different landscapes might not be real places, but symbolic ones, representing different stages of a journey or a ritual. The fact that the people in the fresco are not fighting, and the journey seems to be peaceful, might indicate that it is not a war scene, but a spiritual one. Furthermore, the lack of any written language at Akrotiri makes it impossible to know for sure. The Akrotiri people used a script that we have yet to decipher, so their voices are silent. We can see their art, but we can't understand what they were trying to say. This forces us to rely on our own interpretations, which are always influenced by our modern perspectives. The mystery of the Akrotiri frescoes is a profound one. It's a puzzle of visual language. We have a masterpiece of ancient art, preserved in near-perfect condition, and yet we cannot be certain of its true meaning. Was it a painting of a great victory, a historical expedition, or a journey of the soul? We don't know, and the silence of the city and its people only deepens the enigma. The frescoes are a ghost of a story, a beautiful, haunting piece of art that promises a revelation that it can never fully deliver. As we continue our journey, we move from the art of the people to the prophecies of the gods. We are now heading to one of the most famous places in all of Greece, the sanctuary of Delphi. Here, a woman sat on a tripod over a fissure in the earth, and with her cryptic utterances, she shaped the destiny of kings and empires. The mystery is not what she said, but how she spoke, and what happened to the voice of the Oracle of Delphi. Allow yourself to drift into a state of profound stillness. The vibrant art of Akrotiri is now a beautiful memory, and we move from the silent world of painters to a place where prophecies were spoken. We are heading to the most sacred site in all of ancient Greece, a place that was believed to be the center of the world, Delphi. Here, a mystery of both the sacred and the scientific has puzzled scholars for generations. Let my voice be the gentle guide that carries you into the enigma of the Oracle of Delphi. For over 1,000 years, from the 8th century BCE to the 4th century CE, the Oracle of Delphi was the most powerful religious figure in the ancient Greek world. Located on the slopes of Mount Parnassus, the sanctuary of Apollo at Delphi was a place of pilgrimage for kings, generals, and common citizens. The oracle, known as the Pythia, was a priestess of Apollo who would sit on a tripod over a fissure in the earth, enter a trance-like state, and deliver cryptic prophecies that were believed to be the words of the god himself. Her prophecies shaped the course of wars, guided the founding of new cities, and influenced the most important political decisions of the time. The mystery of the oracle isn't whether she existed. The historical records and archaeological evidence are clear on that. The mystery is how she did it. What caused her to enter this trance and speak in this profound, often unintelligible way? For centuries, the most common explanation was that the trance was a religious performance, a theatrical ritual designed to create a sense of awe and mystique. The priestess would simply feign a trance, and her utterances would be interpreted and shaped by the priests of the temple. But a more scientific theory, one that has gained significant support, suggests there was a physical cause for her state. The ancient writers described the Pythia as breathing in vapors from a chasm in the earth. For a long time, this was dismissed as a myth. Geologists and archaeologists who studied the site in the early 20th century found no evidence of a fissure or geological activity that would produce such vapors. This seemed to support the idea that the trance was a ritual performance. However, in the late 1990s, a new team of scientists and archaeologists revisited the site. Their work uncovered something remarkable. They discovered that the temple was built on a geological fault line. This fault line was intersected by another fault line, and at this intersection, there were two springs that could have released hydrocarbon gases from the limestone beneath the earth. The team found evidence of ethylene and other light hydrocarbon gases. Ethylene, in particular, is a sweet-smelling gas that, when inhaled, can produce a trance-like state, a sense of euphoria, and out-of-body experiences. This new scientific evidence completely changed our understanding of the oracle. It suggests that the Pythia was not simply faking her trance. She was likely under the influence of a potent, naturally occurring gas. The priests of the temple, who would have been familiar with the effects of the gas and the cycles of its release, could have controlled when the oracle would be in a receptive state. This theory helps to explain the unpredictable nature of the prophecies and the seemingly random moments when the oracle was available to speak. The mystery of the Oracle of Delphi is a perfect example of how science can shed new light on ancient mysteries. It shows that sometimes what seems like pure myth or religious mysticism can have a very real physical explanation. It doesn't diminish the spiritual power of the site, but it grounds it in a scientific reality. The Pythia may have been a genuine conduit for the god's voice, but that voice may have been facilitated by the unique geology of her sacred space. The legacy of the oracle is profound. Her prophecies, whether divinely inspired or chemically induced, had a massive impact on the ancient world. The question of how she spoke remains a fascinating puzzle, a perfect blend of faith, history, and science. And as we leave the sacred slopes of Delphi, we turn to a different kind of puzzle, one that is not about prophecy, but about a lost art. We will now explore the mystery of Greek fire, a weapon so secret and so powerful that it saved an empire from destruction, but whose formula was lost to time. Sink even deeper now, letting the echoes of the Oracle of Delphi fade into the quiet. We are moving from the world of prophecies to the realm of a different kind of power, the power of science and secret technology. We are now journeying to the heart of a puzzle that saved an empire, but whose solution remains one of the greatest lost secrets of the ancient world. Let my voice be the steady guide that carries you into the mystery of Greek fire, a weapon of such devastating power that its very recipe was lost to time. The story of Greek fire is not from ancient Greece in its classical sense, but from the later Byzantine Empire, which was the successor to the Roman Empire and had its capital in Constantinople. In the 7th century CE, the Byzantine Empire was facing a dire threat from the Arab Caliphate, which had a powerful navy and was laying siege to Constantinople. The city was on the brink of collapse, but it was saved by a secret weapon, a substance that could burn on water and terrorize the enemy fleet. This was Greek fire. The weapon was not a simple incendiary device. It was a liquid that was projected from a nozzle, likely a bronze siphon, and it was said to have been so flammable that it could not be extinguished by water. The Byzantines used it with devastating effect, routing the Arab fleets and lifting the sieges of their capital. Greek fire was the ultimate equalizer, giving the Byzantines a technological edge that allowed them to survive for centuries against overwhelming odds. The mystery is this: what was it? The formula for Greek fire was an incredibly well-guarded state secret, so much so that it was never written down. It was passed from one Byzantine emperor to another, and from one master alchemist to the next. The Byzantines called it liquid fire, or sea fire, and they fiercely protected the knowledge of its creation. They even spread the rumor that it was a divine gift from an angel to the first Christian emperor, Constantine the Great, to add to its mystique and to deter anyone from trying to replicate it. And for centuries, no one could. The secret was so well kept that when the Byzantine Empire finally fell, the formula died with it. For a long time, historians and chemists have tried to figure out what was in Greek fire. We know it wasn't gunpowder, as that was not invented for several more centuries. The most common theories suggest a mixture of various ingredients that were known at the time. One theory posits that it was a petroleum-based mixture, possibly a form of crude oil or naphtha, which is a highly flammable liquid. Other possible ingredients could have included quicklime, sulfur, resin, or saltpeter. When quicklime comes into contact with water, it produces a very high temperature reaction, which could ignite the other components and explain why the fire could burn on water. The use of saltpeter, a key ingredient in gunpowder, could have also helped to make the mixture more explosive, but the exact proportions and the precise method of preparing and projecting the liquid remain a complete mystery. The Byzantine weapon was not just a simple firebomb, it was a complex system of chemistry and engineering. The siphons used to project the liquid were an invention in themselves. The Byzantines had a sophisticated understanding of pressure and hydraulics. The story of Greek fire is a powerful example of how knowledge can be a weapon. It shows that sometimes the greatest mysteries are not found in the ruins of a lost civilization, but in the classified files of a powerful empire. It is a secret that was so well kept that it shaped the course of history and then simply vanished, leaving us with a powerful legend and a tantalizing puzzle that we may never solve. The lost knowledge of Greek fire is a ghost from the past, a silent testament to a genius that was so brilliant it could not be contained, and so volatile that it could not be shared. And as we finish our journey through these great unsolved mysteries, we come to a final, profound riddle that is not about an object or a person or a lost technology, but about an entire system of thought. We will now turn to the philosophy of the skeptics, and the ultimate mystery of whether it is possible to truly know anything at all. Let go now, letting the ancient secrets and lost knowledge fade into the peaceful darkness of your sleep. We have traveled through great riddles of lost cities and forgotten technologies, but our final journey takes us inward, into a mystery of the mind itself. We are now at the very core of one of the most profound philosophical puzzles of ancient Greece. This is not a mystery of a physical place, but a mystery of thought. Let my voice be the final guide as we explore the ultimate unsolved Greek mystery, the question of whether it is possible to truly know anything at all, the enigma of skepticism. The word skeptic comes from the ancient Greek word skeptikos, which means inquirer or seeker. The most famous of the ancient skeptics was Pyrrho of Elis, a philosopher who lived in the 4th and 3rd centuries BCE. He was said to have accompanied Alexander the Great on his campaigns, and his travels to India and exposure to Eastern philosophies, particularly the Buddhist idea of detachment, are said to have deeply influenced his thinking. Pyrrho's philosophy was a direct challenge to the confident claims of other philosophers of his time, like the Stoics and the Epicureans, who believed they had found the path to truth and knowledge. The core of Pyrrhonian skepticism is epoch, or the suspension of judgment. Pyrrho argued that for every claim we can make about the world, an equally plausible counterclaim can be made. For every argument in favor of a particular truth, there is an equally strong argument against it. Since we can't be sure which side is right, the wisest course of action is to simply suspend our judgment. By not committing to any particular belief, we can avoid the mental disturbance that comes from constantly being wrong or from trying to defend an indefensible position. Pyrrho believed that this suspension of judgment, this state of inquiry, would lead to ataraxia, a state of serene inner tranquility and peace of mind. The mystery of Pyrrho and the skeptics is that we have no writings from him. Our knowledge of his philosophy comes to us second-hand, from the writings of his student Timon of Phlius, and later from the philosopher Sextus Empiricus. This leaves us with a fundamental puzzle. What did Pyrrho truly believe, and what were his true teachings? Was he a genuine skeptic who believed that no knowledge was possible, or was his skepticism a tool to find a different kind of truth? The lack of any definitive written work from the founder of this philosophy is one of the greatest ironies of ancient thought. The man who argued that we cannot truly know anything did not leave us with a clear record of his own thoughts, forcing us to rely on the interpretations of others. It's like a great master who taught his students only through conversation, leaving behind no textbook or definitive guide. This makes the true nature of his philosophy a matter of debate and interpretation. Pyrrho's radical skepticism was a philosophical bombshell. It challenged the very foundation of Greek philosophy, which was built on the search for truth and a rational understanding of the world. It forced philosophers to re-examine their assumptions about knowledge, truth, and certainty. The mystery of his philosophy is whether it was a genuine dead end, an argument that knowledge is impossible, or whether it was a brilliant method for achieving inner peace. Was the ultimate goal of Pyrrhonian skepticism to live in a state of eternal questioning, or was the questioning a means to an end, a path to tranquility? The mystery of ancient Greek skepticism is the perfect way to end our journey. It reminds us that some of the greatest riddles are not found in the physical world, but in the intangible world of ideas. The questions raised by the skeptics, can we truly know anything? How do we live in a world of uncertainty? Are as relevant today as they were 2.5 millennia ago. They are a profound and eternal mystery, a challenge that encourages us to always question, always seek, and perhaps to find peace in the beautiful, unresolved puzzles of life. And with that, our journey through the most interesting unsolved Greek mysteries comes to an end. May the peace of these stories and the quiet of the night bring you a deep and restorative sleep. Good night.